I want to say Qila Kasla. When I say Qila Kasla, I welcome you in your greatness without any precondition. And this is the importance of language. And that's been part of the foundation of my work with North Island College.
I'm Evelyn. I am originally from Kinkamilet. I'm a retired RN, but I've been working with North Island College for 15 years.
I'm Joanna Fraser, a nursing instructor at North Island College, and I'm honoured to have worked with Evelyn Voyager to take nursing students to remote First Nations communities on the central and west coast of Vancouver Island. We started in 2007 taking fourth-year nursing students for a week-long immersion learning experience. When we're there, we take a wellness-centered approach and we learn from the community about health and wellness from their perspective. And we also learn from the land by being on the land, fishing and berry picking, and joining in with the community on their daily events.
Some of the NIC faculty asked me to come and work with them. They didn't want to do it on their own because they said they were not natives and they wouldn't know what to do. So I came and helped with the program, being culturally aware in all the training that they're getting. To me, it is so awesome because when I was becoming a nurse, all we did was teach the students how to treat the dominant society. And I truly didn't think that was the right way because I began to see in hospitals where I first worked how it was lacking, how to understand the other people.
Nugram Het Majalas, that's my everyday name from my Jawa Deno tribe. And I've gone through the potlatch system, and my latest name, traditional name, is Kohot Ngeje. I started a field school with North Island College in Riverson in 2007 and had the privilege of actually traveling with them to my hometown of Guai, Kinkamilet. And what I do with the school, I teach them, not so much teach them, but create opportunities for them to learn through introspection of who they are. So we all come from different experience. But our experience in life is what puts the context of where we go, where we go in life. And so that's what same with students. When they come into Rivers or Kinkam, they're given the opportunity to experience community dynamics, okay? And through that observation of community dynamics, they go through introspection of the nursing practice. Because there's a difference between how systemic universities, or there's a difference in how they look at things. And rightly so. It's neither here nor right or wrong. It's just systemic is different from people orientation. So in terms of teaching student nurses, you just share your life experience. You share your principles and values without the expectation of them adopting it. Last week we had what we call a Hitlukwila, a 10-minute ceremony for my great-great-granddaughter. And part of our responsibility is to teach our children to be the best person that they can be on their terms, not on our terms. Same thing with education. How do we invite nurses to be the best that they can be in nursing without putting our right and wrong or whatever concept you want to put on that?
I'm Samantha Christensen. I'm part of the Cayuga Checklist at First Nations Governance. I am a legislative ha'oya, and I hold the Community Services portfolio for the nations. Cayuga Checklist at First Nations is a community of about 200 people living there. You can't actually drive in, it's quite remote. Having raising student nurses in First Nations communities, I thought was a good fit because that's kind of contrary to how things have been in the past, where nurses come in and they tell the community how they're going to do their nursing, and they also tell the community how they're going to respond to the nursing that they're giving. Whereas what Joanna and the research team were trying to do was kind of build that relationship so that the nurses are providing what the individuals in the community want for their health, to help improve their lifestyle and the well-being of the community.
The field schools have had a great impact on the students and on our curriculum, so we thought we should try bringing first-year students out so that we would have that experience even earlier in our curriculum and have a bigger impact. So last spring we took 2 groups of first-year students. One went to Cayucot and one to Hawaiiat on the west coast of Vancouver Island with the Neutral North communities. When we're in the community, we learn from the community there about Indigenous health and wellness. We take a very appreciative look at the community. We also learn from the land. We spend time on the land. We go out to the ancient village sites, and then we also thank the community with a feast at the end of our visit. The students are really impacted by how transformational this learning is for them. And for me, every year I feel I get to experience something really special. So I'm thinking that the work we're doing is really important, both for nursing practice, and also for education.
The main thing that we talked about is how important it is to get to know your client. And one of the things we talked about extensively last year is that the family is who the client says it is. And we were in a community of, the population was, around 200? And everyone there was family. And it was really amazing. And everyone there loved and supported each other, and that kind of drove home how important it is to get to know your client and to get to know what they need.
Not every single program is going to work for every single person, and that it's really important to talk to our clients and figure out what works for them, because ultimately they know best what they need and how we can support them.
So for me, that was really impactful, just to carry it forward with me and understand, like as a nurse, getting that insight from the people that you're working with, from your clients, to understand what is conducive to their healing and to carry that forward so that you can actually properly help them in their health and healing.
Another thing that really stuck with me that we talked about was just the effort it goes into to getting a helicopter to land for like an emergency evacuation for like a air ambulance. They have to like use like trucks and like quads, like the lights on them, because they don't have any lights like for a helicopter to land. And I think just showing that like it's not so easy for everyone to access healthcare, and when people are displaced from their community, they lose a lot of their supports, and like Katie said, it can be really impactful in their healing. And I think just always like meeting the client where they are, as everyone always says, and learning the situation they're in and not just assuming what's going on.
In nursing school, we often tend to focus a lot on the skills. It's a huge part of it. They're really trying to push the relational inquiry piece on us, and it's incredibly important. And it just made me, going to the field school really made me appreciate how important it really is to take that inquiry step, that step further, and asking about home life and access to resources, and some of the barriers that they might be facing, and how we can kind of adapt our practice to work with that.
And just really meeting them where they're at and understanding what might or might not be available to them in their community. And being in Bamfield, we did see some of that, what is accessible and what isn't. And so for me, that really influenced how I was going to approach it. And I had that opportunity several times the last few weeks, working with a social worker in the hospital with our clients and working together on resources that were available in their communities and taking the time to understand what was going to be there for them when they got home.
It really gave us the opportunity to learn about remote cultures and remote communities, and also Indigenous and First Nation communities, and also just opening our eyes up to anyone, and every individual is their own person and they might have their own way of doing something. Our country is super diverse, and I think just being cautious of that or cognizant of that at all times is a really, really valuable skill to have.
And it's my job to get to know them and to build a relationship with them and to gain trust with them, like Haley was saying, and how important that is to meet them where they're at and get to know what they need and what they have available to them. And that's how I can give the best healthcare that I can give in my position.
I became involved in the project, much to my own surprise, as a result of a funding application that I was supported to do with CAR-T, our research group at North Island College, mostly as a learning opportunity. And we applied for the Community College Social Innovation Funding through SSHRC, and we were lucky to be recipients. So that was a big surprise for me, and a steep learning journey. But luckily I was able to reach out and with the support of other experienced researchers such as Jocelyn Vanas-Kenny and Evelyn Voyager, we put a team of inquiry together which included students, co-explorers and community members from the communities we'd worked with on the Zwatneo community and the Wekano communities, and the communities we were hoping to work with in Cayucit and Huayet. The project has been amazing learning for me. My background has been in community development, but taking a research approach to working with Indigenous communities was really exciting for me. I've learned so much from the group that we've been working with. It's been very collaborative. We started off with a meeting together, a workshop, where we were guided by starting with Newtown Health Elder to teach us about the protocols of engaging with community, and then by Paul Willey, who is an Indigenous man with research background and community leadership background.
It was a two-pronged workshop. One was with the group and one was with the community people who were there. And it was just an invitation, an update on expanding the communities that get involved in the nursing. And what they did was, they shared their values and beliefs from a nursing perspective from their Indigenous communities. One of the things that I really appreciated about the workshop, it was the affirmation that we have similar values or have similar teachings, and it's always about accepting that change is possible, but that change comes from within. Because part of my education, and we're going to talk about a little bit about Indigenous methodologies, research methodologies. I've took courses at UBC on statistical analysis, so I was very keen on reliability and significant data. Then I go home and my people saying you have to also include how that impacts on our lives. So it's about relationship when you do research, and so that's part of. So my people believe in everything exists in dichotomy, and so which means there's a left and right. And that's a teaching of the Sisu, that double-headed serpent. It's not so much about you have a choice, but you also, would you place yourself in that grid, between right and wrong? You want to do it that way? Because unfortunately, some people think you have a choice one or the other. No, it's a choice of living in balance. Because good cannot exist without evil, and this is part of my teachings. Very much like you can't go up without coming down. They're in relationships, so they're the same thing.
Then we met together as small groups to talk about how to engage in the research, just to get us started in a good way. At those small groups, I was trying to figure out how to work through the tricky issue of consent in the community. So I talked about what consent looked like from an institutional perspective and what the expectations were. And then I had one of my first and biggest lessons. The community members were talking about what knowledge meant to them, what knowledge was for, what types of knowledge should be shared, and were so generous in what they were offering us. And we were going back and forth as I was trying to explain what the college and institution needed. And all of a sudden, one man just sort of stopped us short, and he introduced himself, starting right back from his ancestry, who he was. And then he explained that by introducing himself, he's giving his credentials of where his knowledge comes from. He recognized that his knowledge is not his own, but it belongs to his community. And the other thing that was interesting is he said, and I've also given you the recourse for if I say something wrong or you feel that it needs to be addressed, you know who to go to now to set me straight. He gave us another lesson, is that it's not about the mistakes we made. We're not shamed for our mistakes, but instead we're made to feel proud because we're worthy of being corrected and set on the right path. So those were three important messages that I had right at the very beginning about the importance of relationship and the way that we consider our relationships when we're working with Indigenous people and trying to build bridges between the institution and the communities. So my hope for this project is mostly to continue to build relationships in the area that we live in and work in and play in. We're honored to be guests on this territory, and we need to learn more about the Indigenous people that have been here all along, because it is important for us to be healthy, to be able to help our planet be healthy. The important piece for all of us is to learn to work together, to share our knowledge for a better community, for a better planet, for balance for all of us.
I'm Heather McCanch, and I'm a co-explorer with the Raising Student Nurses in Remote First Nations Communities, and I'm a third-year nursing student. I wanted to deepen my learning about the structural inequities in healthcare and education caused by colonial ideologies. I also have an interest in how experiential land-based learning informs education and personal growth and the ability to see structural inequities. And also the resilience within First Nations communities. As a co-explorer, I constantly open and reopen the ways that I see story and hold story. And in the process, I learn more about myself and how I've been socialized within colonial ways of understanding research, education, and relationship. I'm hopeful this project is another piece of the work we all have to do to address the inequitable ways that healthcare and healthcare education is conceptualized and constructed.
Hi, my name is Kate Moynihan. I am a co-explorer on the Raising Student Nurses in Remote Communities Inquiry Project, and I'm a fourth-year Bachelor's of Science in Nursing student. So I wanted to become a nurse because I really wanted to be in service to my community, and I felt that this was my area of my gifts, was in nursing and in caring for people in that way. And with nursing, I thought, like, nurses are participating in small acts of kindness every day, and accumulatively that makes a huge impact on the planet. And then once in nursing school, I realized that in order to change policies and to influence curriculums, inquiry or research was a great way to make those big changes in our system in order to make the world a better place.
My name is Jennifer Spurr. I am a third-year nursing student and a co-explorer on the research project Raising Student Nurses with Remote First Nations Communities. I became involved in the project, I guess, out of a sense of responsibility to acknowledge my settler privilege and as a way to recognize my complicity within the systemic racism that's faced by Indigenous people in our community on a daily basis. I've been reflecting on the learnings and the takeaways from being involved in this project, and I guess I've found it's actually really hard to come up with the words to describe how profound the learning has been, which is really a testament to the impact of land-based and experiential learning, and how the learning is such an embodied experience. This embodied experience is a theme that's resonated from the participants in the inquiry project and the students that have participated in the field school. So it's been a recurring theme throughout our inquiry process. Through the inquiry process, a big learning for me was that it really upended what I thought I knew about research and the inquiry process. My Western colonial understanding of what research is or what it looks like, how it is conducted, was really turned on its head for me. And so I really value the learning that came out of that. A part of that was that it illuminated the tensions that exist between institutionalized research and the agendas and timelines of institutional research, and then a recognition that the collaboration and relationship building that occurs within collaborative community engagement only happens at the speed of trust. So those tensions were really illuminated through this inquiry process for me. I feel like coming through this research process, sometimes I've come away with more questions than answers. And so those questions revolve around coming to know and engaging in a good way, and how do we go about doing that in true collaboration and dialogue. And if the aim of this work is to decolonize nursing curriculum through relationship building, I think an important takeaway that I've gained from this is that we really need to listen to what we're hearing from communities. And if we're hearing very little from communities, what is this telling us? And so it's caused me to reflect on what the story is that's behind the negative space in the inquiry project and the process itself, and has left me with the question of how do we move forward in solidarity with Huu-ay-aht and Cayucit communities with this work in a way which is accountable to each community. An unexpected learning for me coming through the inquiry process has been a deeper sense of personal reflection on my own settler privilege, and developing a greater sense of awareness of how my privilege as an individual is complicit within the structural racism that exists in our society towards Indigenous people on a daily basis.
It's my hope that this project helps to influence nursing curriculum in a way that helps to balance out the knowledge privileging that goes to Western science and scholarship and the biomedical approach to nursing. That is the way that it is now. It's highly privileged and the balance is way off, and so graduates come out missing an entire other understanding of the world, and thus perpetuate those colonial worldviews, and those worldviews are what the research shows are massively contributing to the inequitable health access and issues that Indigenous people face all over the world. And so my hope is that the students who partake in these immersion experiences come out with a deeper learning about themselves and their own biases and their own way of being in nursing in order to reduce the inequalities that exist in Canada and worldwide.
I actually have a couple of grand visions that I'm hopeful that might transpire through the work of this project. First, I hope that for students that participate in this experience, or perhaps projects that are similar, that there's the opportunity for a shift in perspective in nursing graduates and future healthcare practitioners. And with that perspective shift, I hope that the big picture is a deconstruction of racism that exists within our healthcare system and a building up of compassion for the way that care is provided to all people, regardless of their background. I'm hopeful that this project can act as a foundation or a stepping stone for nursing education and post-secondary institutions to take responsibility for authentic and reconciliatory relationship building with Indigenous communities. One of my visions moving forward for the project is that communities can utilize the collective learning that has occurred through this inquiry process as a platform to start a dialogue between First Nations communities and post-secondary institutions and nursing education as a way to transform how nursing education is structured and delivered and create a vision for something that is innately more accessible and appealing to people living in First Nations communities remotely.
The dinner was held in the community center in the village. As we waited for people to arrive, I felt my cultural location, privilege, and whiteness very acutely. I have always been aware of the common archetypes that I could perpetuate during this work: the missionary, the voyeur, the self-motivated researcher, only looking to increase my own prestige and status in the academic world. Sitting in that community hall, these archetypes ran through my mind, and I needed to hold tight to the underlying reason why I was there in the first place. I am there because I desire to be part of reconciliation. I don't know what I'm doing, if what I'm doing is right or wrong, if I'm adding or taking away from the greater issues at play in these interactions. As people started to arrive, I wanted to communicate only that I see you, I am here, present in the moment, I am open to hearing and changing and growing.
In terms of the traditional research, I've had to learn that it goes beyond statistical validity and analysis, but also how the observer impacts the outcome of your research. And that's really important when you're talking about relational outcomes of research. Because the outcome you want to make a positive impact on the life of the people you're studying. And that is part of what Indigenous research is about. It's not about statistical analysis, it's about how will I create the opportunity for you to grow if that is your choice, you know. So it always comes down to a choice that people have. My expectations or my wish for the outcome, I firmly believe that culture is the foundation of wellness. So the full expression of our culture, our values, our principles, our practices, in equal partnership with other cultures that create a better quality of life for everyone. And that we address, go beyond dealing with symptoms and look at the root causes, because unfortunately modern medicine is all about dealing with symptoms and not the root cause. And my wish for healthcare, and so we believe that culture is the foundation of wellness. And so in order for us to be well, we need the full expression of our culture as Indigenous people, but also the respecting that everyone is Indigenous, you know, in the recent past, and to work at dealing with root causes and not the symptoms.
The nursing students wanted to actually learn about the people in the community. Our people always want to know about who's coming in. So I think that was really great to actually have that going both ways for a change. And that's what we hear back from the community. It was something different and they really enjoyed it, and it really opened them up to be a part of the experience.
Always seemed to be an underlying fear of healthcare workers. And part of that comes from experience a lot of people. For example, and this comes from traditional, when people got taken away to TB hospital, they came back in boxes. And so there's underlying, in the back, a lot of people say, if I go to the hospital, I'm gonna come back in the box. And so there's a fear. And that's, and you take a look at our history, whether it's through smallpox or TB, and lately cancer, things like that. Yeah. So part of the positive aspect of student nurses in community is that we know and learn that they're humans like us. And it's that relationship that creates that trust,
I know they really, really appreciate what we're doing. But the biggest thing this program is doing is we are educating good nurses. And I'm not just saying that to brag about it. I hear about them from the people they're working at, the villages where they are working, that they are great nurses. One lady said they're not there because it's a job. They're there because they love what they're doing, and they understand us. They know who they are, and they know how to be, how to work, and how to build relationships with the clients that they have.
I like to say, Kayla Kesla, thank you for those who have the wisdom to look at how things have been done and the willingness to explore new possibilities. And I really appreciate the School of Nursing, and I gather that other departments are looking at similar movements and that it's going to create changes for a better world. And I really appreciate that. And I want to say thank you, Kayla Kessler, for that. Thank you for taking time to view this interview. But I want to also share with you a word that we use. We say halakasla. And again, you go as you came. And if our interaction has changed you, let it have been your choice and not because I'm asking you to change. Because that's what life is about. Creating the choice for us to, and also to understand that life is family and that we all belong. Thank you. Wait.